General stock, although you have
General stock, yes, we sell general stock. We sell books for 50 cents to, $1,000.
Or more.
We push our carts books out just like they used to, the
Like
old
they do
way.
in Brattle and Boston. That
Yes,
kind of thing.
yes,
Yeah.
we do that. And we believe in selling all kinds of books. It doesn't matter if it's a 50-cent book
Yeah,
or a
here it is.
$5,000 book. We like to appeal to all the people who read. In fact, we do a couple shows where all we take are paperbacks that are priced anywhere from $5 to $10. We do a show in Miami, and we rent 3 tents, which is about the size of 3 10-by-10 booths, and we bring nothing but paperbacks.
All right, I don't want to waste any of this. I want to get some of this on tape.
Okay.
Okay, so ready?
Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Taylor Bowie. We're here at the 2012 Seattle Antiquarian Book Fair, Seattle Center. It's Sunday, October 14th, and I'm having the pleasure now of speaking with Lawrence Carr, who's the owner, proprietor of Bookleggers Used Books in Chicago. Not someone that I've actually had a chance to chat with until today, so Lawrence, thank you very much.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
you being willing to
Nice
sit
to be
down
here.
for a mild grilling and tell a few stories. And,
I can tell a few.
have a good time.
I've
So
been known to tell a few stories.
I hear you. Well, let's just start off with a little bit about your background, where you were born and raised,
Okay.
where you went to school when you were a kid, things like that.
Okay. I was born in Chicago. I still live in the vicinity of Chicago, but born and raised. My parents were born and raised there. I'm the oldest of 7 children. I'm 9 years older than the youngest, so growing up I wound up taking care of my kids, my brothers and sisters. Blue-collar family, blue-collar neighborhood, janitors, factory workers, education.
Richard Daley Sr. kind of neighborhood.
Yes, it was always Richard Daley. It was always Richard Daley. And so I grew up in this blue-collar neighborhood, and no one was ever expected to go on to college after that. And in fact, out of all my brothers and sisters, which, like I said, there's 7 of us, I'm the only one to even finish high school, let alone college.
What did your dad do for a living?
Well, my dad didn't do a whole lot for a living. Growing up as a kid, he was unemployed for a long time. He liked to play the horses. And unfortunately, sometimes he would lose all his money and he'd have to call home. He'd have to go pick him up. But eventually, my father became a captain at the Cook County Jail in Chicago. So he rose in rank there and received, got some status by being a captain at the jail. And eventually, after high school, I went on to college and dropped out.
Where did you go to college?
I went to a junior college in downtown Chicago called Luke Junior, and I was majoring in business. What a mistake that was. I took the same accounting class 3 times because I could not get a C, higher than a C. So I finally gave up, and I walked away.
3rd time was not a
Yeah.
chance.
And then my dad says, well, you need a job. Why don't you come and work at the jail? So I did. I went and worked at the jail, and I was there about a year and a half, and lo and behold, because I wasn't in college anymore, I was drafted. They had a lottery system, and I saw when I was scheduled to go, and so I went to the draft board and said, I don't want to wait 6 months. I says, take me now. I wanted to get it over with. And
What year was that?
that was in April of '69. So in April of '69, I was in the military. I took my basic at Fort Bliss, Texas, and then went on to my advanced infantry training at Fort Ord, California, and was quickly shipped to Vietnam, where after a few months, and I realized that this was not a war to be won. It was big business, really big business.
Recalling the men you were serving with, and I'm assuming they were all men, was this kind of the general consensus at the time that they knew that it was a...
It didn't take long.
Yeah.
It didn't take long. Within a couple months, you realized that you were not there to win a war. You were there to
So it wasn't a question
sustain
of
it.
what year, it was just
Right.
how long you were there before you realized.
Right,
it.
a couple
Yeah, I
months,
understand.
easily a
Yeah.
couple months.
Okay.
I was there, and needless to say, I was with the 1st Air Cavalry Division, 2nd Battalion, 8th Cav. I actually served 14 months in Vietnam. The general term was 12 months. You'd served a year, and then they sent you back. But one day, while I was sitting in a foxhole, and I had water up to my neck, and I was sitting on my helmet to keep my head above water, looking out into a pitch black jungle. And I said, you have to excuse me here, what the fuck am I doing here? And I had an epiphany, and I says, I'm getting out of here.
You were what, about 19?
No, I was 22. I was the oldest person in my company at 22. 135 men. And when I got, the next morning, after I got done pulling guard duty, I went and saw my captain, and I says, I want to extend my tour of duty here in Vietnam, 66 days. Well, if you extended your tour in Vietnam to stay, they would let you out 5 months early. So that's what I did. And everybody says, you're nuts, you're gambling. And I says, I don't care, I want out. Because
It was worth the gamble.
if I was going to be sent back to the United States, I had no intention of fulfilling my military obligation. I just would have went home. They would have arrested me and just kicked me out. I had no intentions of fulfilling it, and so I thought the best thing to do was extend my tour of duty, which I did. I was awarded a Bronze Star. I was awarded the Air Medal for flying in 25 combat missions by helicopter. And my goals when I was going to leave Vietnam was to go back to college and sell marijuana. That was my goal, and needless to say, I did that successfully.
Both.
Yes. I no longer do one of those, but I finished college, got a degree in English literature.
And which college is that?
I went to Northeastern Illinois
Uh-huh.
University, and of course the GI Bill paid for that, and at the same time I returned working at the jail
Really?
while I was going to college.
Wow,
Yes.
so you got a full plate.
Yeah, I had a full plate, and I have a lot of energy. I don't think I have as much now, but back then I had a lot of energy.
Was your dad still working there as
My
well?
dad was still working there too, and I worked there about 6 more years, and at that time, as I matured, I realized I was too small. I was in a jail with criminals. You were actually locked in there.
Oh, I see.
And I can remember the one time when there was a riot in one of the prison cells, which housed about 150 inmates. And I was the first one up there when the riot was going on. As I stepped into the cage, they have like a living room that's a cage, and all the inmates were swinging buckets, brooms, shivs, and I'm the littlest guy there. 150 inmates killing each other. But within a few minutes, the rest of the other officers showed up, and so, and I told my wife about it, and I says, I'm going to quit, and she was so pleased that I was going to quit. And I remember the day I quit. It was very dramatic, just like out of a movie. You know, I came to the captain's office, and he told me to where I was supposed to report. And I says, I took off my badge and I threw it on the table, and I says, I quit. And I walked out, and as I was leaving the front entrance, where there's a guard entrance, there was a phone call, and it was the captain. He said, Van de Carr, I says, I thought I told you to report to cell block such and such. And I says, Commander, I says, I thought I told you I quit. And hung up and walked away. And,
It's like a movie.
and it was, I can't explain the weight that was lifted off of me. I mean, I just felt so free. So what was I going to do? So, needless to say, I was still in my marijuana business, which I continued for maybe another 5 years while unemployed, and had children. And the minute I had some children, I said, that's it. I'm giving up this part of the business, and I need to find something else to do.
Yeah.
And I was always going to the bookshops. I was a reader of English literature, American literature as well, and I says, why don't I open up a bookstore?
What were some of the shops in the Chicago area you used to go to?
Oh, back then, we had Printers Row, Howard Cohn, and he had about 3 shops, and I used to go to them all. And then there were a number of others, and I'm talking about 35, 36 years ago, and none of those stores are there now.
O'Gara and Wilson.
O'Gara and Wilson's, yes, I went to there, and Powell's, on 57th Street. I would go to those too. And I said, I'm going to open up a bookshop. And I started accumulating books. And one day, walking in my neighborhood on Sheridan Road, which is in Rogers Park, which is the suburb furthest north in Chicago, just south of Evanston, I saw a little basement store of about 600 square feet. And I said, I walked in, I found out it was $225, and I says, okay, this is going to be my shop. And across the street was the 400 Theater, and so lots of walking traffic. It was
Its basement was like a daylight basement with windows.
right,
Oh,
and
nice.
you walk down into 600 square feet. I bought all the lumber. I built all the shelves going just around the outer part of the walls, and I filled the middle 3 shelves with books going all the way around. And that's how I started. And I was there 10 years, and that was my apprenticeship.
Was that the name you used, Bookleggers?
Bookleggers, and I picked it out of a book, Canticle for Leibowitz. I was reading
really?
Canticle for
Okay.
Leibowitz, and the main character, Leibowitz, was a booklegger. And I says, there's my name. It's Bookleggers Used Books. And I had no mentor in the business, nobody to train me. And I can still remember talking to Larry Dingman one day, and he used to talk about, it was so great to come to my store because I didn't know what I was doing. And he said, and he was right. And the book dealers would just come into my store and walk out with stacks because I hustled and hustled, and eventually that store was just jam-packed, and that was 10 years. That was my apprenticeship. And then I moved my store to the near north side, and I got a store about 1,000 square feet.
Now, what year was that when you?
That was, okay, let's see, 69, so that must have been, let's see, that was 79 when I opened the first shop, so this would be 1989 now. And this was 1,000 square feet, and it was a very, it's the one neighborhood in Chicago where more people lived than any other neighborhood. Lots of high-rises, you're near the lake, and people are constantly moving, and so I opened this shop there, and that was my journeymanship, I would say, and I spent 10 years there. Then,
See a pattern here.
yeah, then I moved again, my third store, which is now 2,000 square feet, about 75,000 books, which I built all the bookcases myself inside that store, and I've been there now 13 years, and that's when I started doing shows. I started traveling around the country, doing Lansing, the Chicago Book Fair, Indianapolis, there was a Cleveland show, there was a Akron show, and Denver show, and then I started doing Texas shows, Dallas, and they started accumulating, and I started meeting people. Dennis and Dennis of First Folio. Dennis bought his first book from me.
When I interviewed Dennis, he talked about his time in Chicago.
Yes.
Very pleasant memories, and
Yes.
how he first got into books.
Yes.
But this is interesting to hear this background, because what you're essentially telling me is that without any mentors or anything, you're basically self-taught.
Yes.
Is that a fair assessment?
Absolutely. I never have sat down and say, how do you run a business? How do you sell books? I've learned everything on my own by going to book sales, book shows, seeing what other dealers are selling, reading the bibliographies, learning that material. And
Learning from your own mistakes.
I still make them.
Sure, I hope so.
Oh yeah,
If you're still alive.
and I'm still learning.
Yeah, of
You
course.
just never stop
No.
in this business.
Never.
It's just
Never.
incredible.
The ones who think they know it all definitely don't.
And I love it.
Yeah.
It's not work. It's not work. It's fun. I get to travel.
Do you have
To me, it's an
employees?
adventure. Yes, I have three.
Three?
I have three, right. Yeah, one full-time, and one part-time. He's a great scout, interesting character. He's a dumpster diver. He's one of these people that is actually a dumpster diver. His house is so filled with books. His bedroom, you can't even get into his bedroom. It's just solid boxes of books right up to the door. And in fact, the only way you can get through his house is he's got a little narrow pathway that goes down the kitchen, about a foot wide, because it's all books. Goes into the living room, about a foot wide. There's a little square area where he sleeps on the floor because the books are piled all over.
Somebody tells me he's single.
He's single. Ron's single, and Ron is infamous in Chicago. Even on some of the sports shows one time, they were talking about this guy that they see all the time driving around the city, and his rear end rides on the rear wheels because it's just station wagon filled with books. Plus he has boxes on top of his car, and they're all taped. It's taped all the way around. The bumpers have shredded tape hanging from them. The doorknobs have shredded tape from them. His old vehicle he got rid of. I can remember walking down the street, and there it was, and the door was wide open because you couldn't close it. It was so filled with books. But it was mentioned on the radio by some sportscasters, in Chicago, about this character that they see all the time running around. That's Ron. He works for me.
Wow.
The other fellow I just hired. He's running the eBay business for me, and we just started that.
Okay.
So
what's your impression so far with that as a venue for selling?
Right now, I'm getting rid of stuff, things I've made mistakes on, just to get some money back.
Yeah.
I don't care if I take a loss on
That's
it.
right.
I just want to move it. So
Better some money than no money.
right, exactly. So that's what we're doing right now, and I have lots of that.
Well,
So as soon as we get run through that, then we'll start putting better things on, maybe asking for better prices, because most of the stuff I'm putting on, I start out at 99 cents. I had a book I paid $500 for, and it sold for like $32.
But you were glad to have the 30 bucks.
It was gone. It's over with.
What is your eBay seller name?
eBay seller name. Well, it's under Bookleggers, but it's JVDC dash. Is that the password? JVDC.
Don't tell us the password.
I'm trying to think. This is under my wife. My wife did this instead of using my name.
Well, we'll try it.
I think I'm pretty sure it's JVDC 2008.
All right. JVDC 2008. Okay.
Yeah. And
We'll check that out.
like I said, we just started this, and then I left for this trip, and we have sold some things, and we're very pleased with
That's
it.
great.
So they're waiting for me to get back to.
At this point, it sounds like you're doing a lot of different things
Yes.
within your business. You have, sounds like a going concern in a retail shop, which is
Right.
unusual in 2012.
Right.
You're doing eBay stuff. You obviously do shows of a wide
Right.
variety. What about the internet?
Yes, we do ABE.
Uh-huh.
We do ABE. We have about 4,000 books online,
Mhm.
and these books are in my house.
Uh-huh.
They're not in my shop, so the customers can't handle them. They can't move them around on the shelves.
So if
the
I
con-
were to come into your shop, then the books that are there are not online.
The books in the shop are not online. None of them are.
I keep telling people that there are lots of reasons to go to bookshops. You can't
Yes.
get everything online, and you are the perfect
Yes,
illustration
absolutely.
of that. In your general inventory in the open shop, do you have everything, as you said, for 50-cent books? Then you have more expensive things
Yes,
too?
yes, we have books up to $1,000, $2,000,
Uh-huh.
$3,000, $5,000. We have display cases and cabinets,
And not listed online.
and they're not listed online. Yes.
Well, listen up, people. This is a great opportunity to visit a bookstore that isn't interneted to death.
And what I have online is in my house.
Yeah,
And if
that
somebody
is great.
sees something, they online, they say, "Can you bring it to the store?" I'll bring it to the
Of
store.
course, sure. Yeah, that's perfect.
Yes.
That's perfect. How do you see, you strike me as someone who's always looking for a way to improve the business, what you're doing. I mean, you're adding different things, and you're not afraid to try new things.
No, no.
How do you see your particular business developing over a period of time? Do you have anything that you're kind of envisioning, the direction it's going to go?
I have a lot of different ideas. I'm not sure about which direction I'm going to go. Sometimes I think of actually buying my own store because I rent, and that's very expensive, and the rent always goes up. I wouldn't mind having a larger store, but then at the same time, I think about just having a rare bookstore and paring down to maybe a small 600 square foot store again.
Kind of like what you started with.
Right, like with what I started with, but with better books and just dealing better books. But I like selling books to everyone. Not those who just collect, but those who just want to spend 50 cents for a paperback Faulkner, to read.
Yeah, we get anything for 50 cents these days is a marvel.
And we have a lot like that. Like I said, a lot of that stuff goes on our carts.
Is there, is this a neighborhood where your shop is where there's a lot of foot traffic?
There's a tremendous amount of foot traffic. There's restaurants, there's bars. We can stay open to midnight if we wanted to.
What are your normal hours there?
Our normal hours are from noon to 9 every day.
Oh, so you do stay late.
Yeah, but during the summer months, we're there 10, 10:30, 11. As long as there's people coming in the store, we stay open. We won't close.
So it's a nightlife neighborhood.
Yes, it's a nightlife. Oh yes, very big nightlife neighborhood.
What about during the day? Are there shops that would complement you at all there?
Yes, there are shops. There's restaurants. There's smoke shops. There's art stores. It's a community.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, like I said, more people live in this neighborhood than any other neighborhood.
Oh, that's right.
In the city of Chicago. It's East Lakeview. It's very close to Wrigley Field.
Yeah.
So.
Is it much of a commute for you to get to work?
No, actually it takes me 40, 45 minutes.
Oh, well.
I live on the northwest side of Chicago now. So.
How do you get to work?
I drive.
Oh, you do? Okay.
I do drive, yes.
Well, that's one thing that kills a lot of people is having to pay for monthly parking in busy areas.
My neighborhood parking is, you have to drive around, but usually I always find a spot.
Find a spot.
Find a spot to park, yes. And let me tell you, there have been a few times in the last 13 years where I've walked out my door and I can't find my car.
Yeah.
And I walk around the wrong way for blocks and blocks.
Oh my God.
And it's happened about 3 or 4 times,
But you eventually find it.
I eventually find it. One time though, I just have to laugh. I have a 1991 Honda 4-door Civic. And I can't tell you how many times people, even while I'm driving, will say, "Do you want to sell that car?" Or I come out of my driveway where I live, and there's a note on this 1991 Honda, Civic station wagon. "Would you like to sell this car? Please call this number." But one day, walking out of the shop, I parked it in a different block that I've never parked it before, and I walked out, and I walked, and I walked. Finally, I gave up after an hour, and I called my wife, and I says, "Janet, I think someone stole my car." But needless to say, I did find it, and I just laughed at myself, the ridiculousness of it.
That is nice. Well,
And I still have that 1991 Honda. In fact, I just purchased antique plates for it because they're cheaper than your normal plates, and you don't have to renew them until 3 years. You have them for 3 years.
how many miles do you have?
It's only got 54,000 miles, and that's a bookstore there. There's a bookstore.
Yes.
There. I went to this woman's house to buy books, and I looked at all her books, and she says, "Would you be interested in buying a car?" And I said, "Well, what kind of car?" She says, "It's a 1991 Honda Civic." And I said, "No." I said, "I'm not interested." But then, as a bookseller, you go, "Well,
Yeah, how much?
yeah, can I see the car?" And she says, "Oh yeah." She says, "It's in the garage." And I walked out in the garage, and she says, "It's only got 2,800 miles on it."
What year was this?
This was 6 years ago.
Oh, my
6 years ago.
Christmas. Are you kidding me?
6 years ago. You heard these car stories, right?
Yeah,
Little old lady with a car.
Wow.
So, and if you know me, I also I've restored cars in my life. I have a couple of collectible cars which I've restored. So, anyways, I look at the car. I look at the hood. I look at the interior. I open the door. The car's brand new. 2000. And I says, I says, don't you drive this car? And she says, I don't like it. It's too scary. And I said, well, how much do you want for this car? And she said, $3,000. And I said, I'll be right back. I went to the bank, I got $3,000, came back and gave her cash. I loaded up her books into the car. She gave me the title, and I drove off with this car. And actually, I had this car for maybe a year and a half and never drove it until my '95 Ford Escort finally gave out. And so I've been driving the Honda ever since, and it now has 54,000 miles in the last 5 years that I've had it.
You put 51,000 miles on it.
Yeah,
Wow,
basically.
That is amazing.
And I cannot tell you, I once had 16 boxes bigger than this, those shipping, those U-Haul boxes,
Yes,
those
they
bigger.
are bigger.
I once got 16 boxes in that car. I went for a book pickup that was at a U-Haul place, and I got 16 boxes in that car, and it's just truly an amazing vehicle.
That is
I
great.
love it.
Do you
But
get
that'll-
you get a lot of house calls at Books?
Yes, I get a lot of house calls. And I'll tell you what, especially lately, and I've been talking to a lot of book dealers, and they were talking to me about them. For some reason, there's an increase on the purchase. People are selling off their collections and books, and I don't know why.
Well, I have two theories about it. One is that, of course, they want to get rid of it, they need money. But two, I found this to be true, at least in the Seattle area. There are fewer booksellers that are willing to go out on house calls, and not too many that have money to spend.
That's true, exactly, because Book Scout, Daryl Simmons, who used to own the Aspidistra book, was partnered with the Aspidistra.
Oh,
Who was a book scout.
There.
Yeah,
That's what I did visit.
they're no longer open.
Yeah.
But Daryl says, he has said to me, I've been telling him about all the books I'm buying. He says, you're the only one in town buying books, and everybody knows it. And even the book dealers are giving people my number, and so I've been
Sort of, how can a business
hustling.
stay
And-
alive without buying books?
Exactly. That's the whole key to the business. You have to buy.
Yeah.
You know that you got to keep the wheels turning. You know, you got to stay in the flow of it, and so I firmly believe in buying.
There's, I've known some dealers over the years who have this funny, it's like an either or thing. Either I'm buying books, therefore I'm buying all kinds of stuff, or I'm not buying at all. And I just want to tell them, buy smart.
Yeah.
You don't have to buy everything. You don't
That's
have to
right.
buy all, but don't say you're not buying. That is
Never.
that's.
You will never hear me say that.
No, well, good, I appreciate
Never.
that.
No, the buying part's the best part.
Yeah, oh, it's always the most fun, isn't it?
I love it. I love it. And especially in Chicago, you get to go to so many neighborhoods, so many different kind of apartment buildings.
Boy.
You know, and you get to, especially along the lake there, where there's all these old buildings and high rises.
Tell me about it.
And, you know,
You know where the old Edgewater Beach Hotel?
oh yes, absolutely.
I'm a collector of stuff about the Edgewater Beach. I
Oh,
just
yeah.
am in love with it, and I didn't even understand it a few years ago that one wing of it is still there. They didn't tear it all down. It's called the Edgewater Apartments.
Right.
Have you ever been in there to look at books?
I have been in there, but I don't remember. But I have
oh,
been
that's
in there.
nice. That's great. I love Chicago. Boy,
It's a great city. I like it
Can't
a
wait
lot.
to get
And,
back.
you know, I love the traveling part of this business. To me, it's an adventure. You know,
You
getting-
do a lot of, when you're traveling to shows and things, are you able to do a lot of scouting?
Absolutely.
That's good.
I do a lot of scouting. I have my iPad. I'll stick a town, Livingston, Nebraska. You know, bookstores. Oh, sure enough, there's a bookstore. You know, so I head off and,
Wow.
and I go to it. You know, I'm like kind of like William Hutchinson in a way.
Yes.
I like to travel
Uh-huh.
and stop in places
Yeah.
and you know.
And you have a reliable staff back.
And
home.
I never even think about the business.
Oh, that's nice.
Once I leave, those guys have complete control,
that's
and
perfect.
they do an excellent job. And
Perfect.
I never complain about them or complain to them. When I get back, everything's on the up. You know, fine.
Without giving away any of your
Trade
secret
secrets? I don't
sources.
have any trade secrets.
No, but tell me, thinking over, say, the last couple of years, being on the road and everything, what was the best sleeper you found in some bookstore someplace? Something that just totally blew you
Oh,
away.
gee, that's really hard to do. I've been doing this for so long, I
Yeah.
can't even remember. I can't even remember the books I've sold.
I know the feeling.
You know, sleeper. Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. I walked into. This is a long time ago. I can't
That's
even
all right.
remember. And there on the shelf was the. Oh God, what was it? It was the LEC that was by Matisse.
Oh, Ulysses.
The Ulysses, yes, where the illustrations, he did the illustrations wrong.
Right.
And of course Aldous was very upset about that, and I believe he walked out signing only maybe 100 or so
Yeah,
copies.
I think Joyce signed 200 of it.
Or something like
and then
that.
he got pissed off.
Yeah, so I was in a store one day, and I pulled off a copy of the Ulysses that was illustrated by Matisse. Very nicely priced, I thought, you know, and I said, oh great, you know, I'll buy this. And I bought the book, and I, you know, put it in my car, and eventually when I got home, I put it on my desk, and it sat there for over a week. And I didn't think anything of it, you know, and then one day when I was sitting there, I pulled it out, and I was looking at it, and I turned,
Oh,
it was signed.
yeah.
He signed it.
By
Huxley.
Joyce.
Joyce. Joyce. Yes, it was signed.
That's nice.
And I just sit there. And I don't think the dealer even knew,
No,
because he didn't price it that way.
either way, it's a great book, but the one signed by Joyce, boy, you
Yeah.
can't
You can't
that.
find those. They're
Yeah,
gone.
like that.
They're all in collectors' hands now.
Well, no, there's one still out there, and you or I are going to find it. I predict it. Lawrence, we've run out of time, but thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure
Oh, good.
just to get to know you and talk to you a little bit too.
Good.
So thank you
All
for
right.
sitting down for the grilling.
Okay, thanks.
Very
All
good.
right, take care. Good.
That was cool.